My name is Erin Colburn. I'm the Pre-Health Advising Coordinator for the College of Health Science here at Boise State University. It's a great pleasure that I introduce you to two individuals representing Idaho State University's dietetics program. I have Alicia Whedon and Sam Mitro from Idaho State University, and you're both located in Pocatello, is that correct?
I'm in Pocatello. Sam is actually a recent grad of our program, and she's actually in Boise right now.
Perfect. And so I'm going to turn the time over to them just to talk briefly about their program, and then we'll open the floor for questions.
So I'm going to begin by giving a quick overview, should have been a little bit more prepared here, of our program at Idaho State University, and then I'm going to let Sam talk a little bit about her experience as she is a transfer student. She started out at Boise State, transferred to Idaho State, and completed both our undergrad program and our graduate level program. And she can talk a little bit about her experiences then. So we are the Department of Nutrition and Dietetics at Idaho State, our representatives for that program. At ISU, we offer two dietetics degrees, or two dietetic programs. One is what we call the DPD program. This is our didactic program in dietetics, and it's also our undergraduate level program. Then we have a combined master's degree plus dietetic internship program that we've abbreviated the MSDI program. And that is the one that kind of finalizes the dietetics degree at Idaho State University. So to begin with, our DPD program, it is an application-based program. So you apply typically in February of your junior year, or what is the year before your final year of our program. Admission will earn you a bachelor's, assuming you complete the program, you will receive a bachelor's of science and dietetics, as well as a verification statement. And the verification statement is kind of that confusing piece as to what it is. And what a verification statement is basically saying that you have met all of the required knowledge and educational components set forth by our accrediting body, which is ASCEND, and that you are now ready to go into a supervised practice, which would be the internship piece of the combined master's dietetic internship program. And so that's really what the verification statement is. It sounds really basic, but it is very, very important for being able to move on to the next steps. As far as when you apply to our program, you are applying for a seat in our medical nutrition therapy classes, or what we call M&T. So we have M&T 1, M&T 2, and M&T 2 lab. And those are the only courses you cannot take unless you've been admitted into the program. And the reason why we have an application process for these classes is, one, we like to try to keep the class fairly small. We take students into the hospitals. We want you going into patient rooms. We want you seeing patients that are there as part of that medical nutrition therapy course. And to do that, we need small groups. And so we generally cap the class at 16 students, or that's how many we admit per cohort, is 16. And that's to help keep our groups small there. The other reason why we have admission process is it's kind of a checkpoint. Are you ready to apply to the next step? And so if there's gaps or weaknesses in your application at the DPD level, we can help to start to address those going into your senior year of the program. It's also a way to check to make sure that you're meeting the basic requirements to be able to get into a master's program as well. So these are the courses that are considered to be our prereq courses that need to be either completed or in progress at the time that you apply to the DPD program. All of them, with the exception of the one that's in orange, can be taken at Boise State or somewhere else other than Idaho State University. The foods and meal management class has a lab component to it. It's the one that has really kind of been the problem for people being able to transfer in. We found some options some places, but they're not consistent across the board with being an optional class to transfer in. What we've found recently is that students will transfer in the spring semester of their junior year to Idaho State and take the meal management class that spring. It's a spring offered class. And so that's been working so far for a couple students that have transferred recently. As far as criteria for being able to be admitted, you need a minimum 3.0 DPD GPA. Now, the DPD GPA specifically refers to the courses that are needed to complete the DPD program. So if you take art history as a gen ed course, that art history course does not count towards your DPD GPA. But if you take macroeconomics or chemistry or biology, those courses do count towards your DPD GPA. So it's within that set of courses that we want you to have a minimum 3.0 GPA. And the reason why we do this is because that's the same GPA that master's degree or internship programs with master's degrees associated with them, that's what they utilize to calculate your admission into their program. Grad schools will look at that 3.0 overall GPA, but internships are really concerned about your DPD GPA. And so we look very closely at that DPD GPA. We also want to make sure that you don't have any grades lower than a C-. We will accept a grade lower than at a C-, assuming that your GPA is still high enough to absorb that C- grade. But if you have a D and A and P, we'll need you to retake that A and P course in order to be able to bring the grade up to qualify for admission. We do strongly encourage both work and volunteer experience, but neither are required at the DPD level. It's a little different at the graduate level. There is more expectation that you will have work and volunteer experience at that time. But at the undergrad level, we want to see it, but you don't have to have it. And so work experience doesn't necessarily mean you have to be working in a hospital as a dietary aide. It can mean that you are working as a waitress or a line cook or a hostess in a restaurant. It might be a service industry that you can use transferable skills that can transfer into dietetics. So while we want you to have dietetics work experience, we also understand that you have to pay the bills. And so I always encourage students not to overlook those transferable skills that go between different professions. As an undergrad, I worked in an accounting office. It's like, that has nothing to do with dietetics. But in the end, it did. I learned about accounts payable. I learned about receiving. I learned about crediting and debiting. I did all these things that actually paid off in the end, even though it didn't look like it was directly applying to dietetics at that time. So with transferring to ISU, right now our program is only offered on the Pocatello campus. I say right now because one good thing that's come about because of COVID is that we've realized that maybe we can teach our program in a slightly different format. And so we are currently investigating how maybe we can do that different format because we've learned, equipment with hybrid class models and things like that is actually working pretty good. So we're playing around with some ideas in hopes that maybe we'd be able to expand it, but right now it is only offered on the Pocatello campus. Many students who come to us from Boise State transfer in their junior year. I have one who just completed prereqs at Boise State and is now in our program. She just applied to our DPD program. She transferred at semester, so spring semester is her first time at ISU right now. I have another one that has done most of her prereqs through the College of Western Idaho and has transferred into Idaho State as well. So they're kind of in the same position where they're both applying to the program to be admitted into the DPD next year, or in fall, I should say. Academics is such a different year than the rest of the world. So my year starts in August, even though everybody else's year starts in January. But so we are finding that junior year is a good time to transfer. If you have questions about transferring, you can always contact me. I do transcript reviews to help identify courses that you've already taken. Where do they fit? How long do you have? I can answer questions about our program, advising type questions, and then just general questions about ISU as well. So our MSDI program is our other program that we offer. I just want to mention it a little bit because it's becoming a bigger focus. If you've done any work in looking into dietetics education, you know that we have a master's degree requirement for entry-level practice beginning in January of 2024. To facilitate the transition between the bachelor's prepared to the master's prepared, we added a master's degree to our dietetic internship about 3 years ago. I think the first group was in 2019 that we admitted. And so this basically says that when you finish our program, you are ready to sit for the RD exam. Right now, you can go through and just do an internship. There aren't very many of those out there anymore. But really, the group that's graduating this spring is going to be the last group that's eligible to do that. So the preparation is now just to be prepared to complete a master's program while also doing your internship. And that's what we allow. We combine those two programs. We offer seats in Pocatello, Twin Falls, and also Meridian. We have 8 seats in Pocatello, 2 in Twin Falls, and 8 in Meridian. And then our program is a 4-semester program. We consider it to be an online program because all the coursework is online. So first semester, you spend doing online coursework. We have students who live wherever and they you don't necessarily have to relocate to Idaho at that time or Pocatello, depending on where you match to with regards to the internship. Semesters 2, 3, and 4 are coursework combined with rotations. So you spend time going around to different facilities. And the rotation time or that internship time is really a hands-on training program. It teaches you basically how to be a dietitian. We give you the foundation at the undergrad level, and then the master's program and the internship is really what makes it finesses that foundation that we give you. And then there is a capstone research project that comes along with that. You just spin that in semester 4, but you do work on the project throughout the program. Then becoming a dietitian, that's always a big question. So right now, for our program at Idaho State, you complete the DPD program, you complete an MSDI program, you then are eligible to take the RD exam, which is our registration exam, become a dietitian, or you get past the RD exam, you become a dietitian, but then in that state of Idaho, in order to practice, you also need to be licensed. So there's also the application for state licensure, but basically once you get through the first 3 steps, the state licensure is not a big deal. As far as job outlook goes for dietetics, it's very strong right now. In the state of Idaho, there's a very strong job market. A lot of our grads are leaving our MSDI program with jobs. So they're hired before they pass the RD exam, which puts a little pressure on them to pass that RD exam. But it's good to see them getting hired. 5 years ago, it was a very different story. They might be working 2 or 3 part-time jobs for a couple of years and then get hired on full-time. But now they're leaving full-time jobs in hand. So job outlook right now is very strong, very positive. We've seen a lot of good growth in Idaho. Where do our grads work? Hospitals is one of the bigger places. There's also outpatient clinics that they work in, community organizations, WIC, SNAP Ed. A handful decide to go into management. A lot of times our students don't start out in a managerial role. They work into that as they get more years of experience. But food service, management is one area that you can also work in. We just don't have as many grads going into that. Just typically our students don't gravitate towards that. They either gravitate towards more the acute care clinical side of it or the community side of nutrition. And then that is my contact information. And I will turn it over to Sam to talk a little bit about her experience as a student in our program and also a transfer student from BSU.
Yeah, so my microphone on, yes.
Yes.
So as mentioned, I was a transfer student from BSU. I went into ISU actually not really understanding the full course of dietetics and what it entailed. So just knowing ahead of time that it is a process, I think is very beneficial. And then especially with certain courses, I would say be very cautious of what ISU requires versus like the process of BSU, because I know when I was at BSU, I didn't require any like biology 101 or anything to take my anatomy and physiology courses. But then transferring to ISU, I had to go back and take that 101 level course in order to meet the requirements for the DPD. So little things like that, I think if you can like stay on top of and compare that transition will help you. And that way, when you get to ISU, the transition is very easy. You can just apply into the DPD and get those courses done in usually a matter of 3 to 4 semesters based on my experience and then other classmates alongside me. And the DPD was great, lots of hands-on experience. It was very fun. I feel like the smaller faculty at ISU allowed for a lot more like in-depth learning, which I very much liked and appreciated. Fosters a good environment for growth and everything like that. And then they set you up very well with those requirements that Dr. Whedon was talking about for the DPD, because then when you go to apply to internships, it becomes a lot more competitive. And while there are internships across the country, as she mentioned, that requirement for the master's degree is where a lot of programs are heading. So there aren't a ton of programs anymore of just the internship. And I feel like ISU actually does a really good job making everything line up. So those boxes are just checked and ready to go. And then in terms of maybe like working alongside school, I had a very vast experience with different jobs. I took a summer internship with Eat Smart Idaho, which I feel like gave me a really good foundation for like community aspects of dietetics. I also had previously worked in a hospital as a CNA, and so that gave me a lot of clinical experience. And then I also, like later on down the line, once life started picking up a lot more, was working for a meal prep company, which kind of gave me a little bit more of that food service experience. And so there's lots of options out there to work and make some money while also balancing school. So that is definitely possible. And then, I don't know, moving into like the whole grad school side of things, the MSDI, that's where life starts to get a little more challenging. I mean, you're essentially working full time as an intern, but without being paid. And so that's where you're gaining all that practical hands-on experience that really translates all your undergraduate education into real life practice. And that's just kind of the path it takes to become a dietitian. So there's no getting out of the internship if becoming a dietitian is what you want to do, but it's really great. And ISU offers so many varieties of different facilities and rotations. And so I really appreciated that in comparison to some other friends I had that did different programs where their experiences were limited. So that's kind of what's coming to mind. Anything else I should touch on?
You did great. And thank you for joining us.
Of course.
So I have a couple questions for the both of you. So what made you decide you wanted to be a dietitian? Like what helped drive you towards that goal? Like, why did you want to be a dietitian?
Yeah, so for me, I had known I really liked healthcare, and that was kind of why I was working in a hospital as a CNA, but I didn't quite know what path was right for me. And then I remember, like, I've always loved food, and I've had some family issues regarding food. And so when I met the hospital dietitian there and she explained what dietetics were, I was very interested. And then when the opportunity presented itself at ISU, it felt right. And I was excited about it because it's a profession where you don't have to, I don't know if this is maybe the right thing to say, but you're not like overly involved with patients or healthcare where it doesn't seem like there's a lot of burnout. And even a lot of dietitians I've met along the way, they're still excited about the profession and it's very rewarding and like there's new aspects to it every day. So that was what excited me about it.
And I actually started out as a food science major. And I really liked the food aspect and the science aspect, but I felt like I missed people because you did a lot of laboratory work there. And so dietetics seemed like a natural fit and flowed really good in with my food science degree. And so that's why I ultimately wanted to become a dietitian. And then I like to help people too. So I think that's another reason why we all gravitate towards the profession.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What's the worst thing about being a dietitian? And transverse to that, what's the best thing about being a dietitian?
I'll let you go first, Dr. Whedon. You have more experience.
I think the worst thing about being a dietitian is people think that we're the food police. Like we carry around a little pad and pencil and we're going to start writing out a ticket every time we see you look at a chocolate chip or think about a cookie. Chocolate chip would go with a cookie, but we're not the food police. You know, that's not what we want to do. We want to help people live a healthier life through food and to enjoy that. And so I think that that's one of the fun things about dietetics is that we get to play with food, one. We get to talk about it and we get to find unique and creative ways to teach people how to cook maybe or to eat or to think about something in a slightly different manner. Vegetables are one. People, I don't know, you talk about vegetables and people just kind of get turned off by them. But if you teach somebody how to cook vegetables in the right way or try something different, you know, maybe you've only had boiled vegetables, roast them, put them on a grill, do something different with them. They taste so much different. And so seeing, you know, a difference, letting people look at that different or learning that difference is very rewarding and beneficial to everyone. And so that's one of the great things about being a dietitian. But we are not the food police. We're not going to give out tickets. We don't, you know, it's not our job to judge. Our job is to help. And you can't be a helper if you judge people. So that's my spiel.
I would agree with that. I feel like, I am still kind of waiting to start my job at St. Luke's as a dietitian, so I'm in a little bit of limbo. But just from my experiences through the internship, there's just such a big misunderstanding about what a dietitian is and what we really do. And so sometimes feeling undervalued when it's like, no, we have all this knowledge, we have all this schooling. And so that's probably the worst / hardest thing that I've encountered so far, is just trying to defend my knowledge and actually like prove my worth. But then the great thing is when you have other disciplines that know and respect what dietitians are, I feel like we add so much to a care team, and we can bring so much value and help people have healthy relationships with food, because food's the center of everything we do. It's a bonding vessel. It nourishes us. Like, there's so much value to it. So being able to be a part of that is very cool.
Very cool. What do you wish someone would have told you before you started a program like dietetics or like ISU?
Just like, the process is tedious. Like, sometimes it feels like there's a lot of hoops to jump through. I remember watching some of my friends just like graduate in 4 years and like be done and start their jobs. And unfortunately, this career path is not that way. Like, in order to become a dietitian, like, you have to do an internship, and where the master's degree is becoming more prevalent, like, you have to take that into consideration. And then nobody really talks about passing the national certification exam. And so there's little things to keep in mind of the process, that it's not just get your undergrad and good to go.
Okay.
I think that's a good point, that it's lots of little things that culminate with a big thing. And all those little things matter. And you can't decide that they matter come your junior year. They need to matter all the way through. And I think that's, as a faculty member and as an advisor, one of the things that I see probably most frequently is like, man, I wish I would have cared sooner. And so starting to care earlier is going to be better.
Okay. That kind of segues into my next question. What advice would you give to students interested in pursuing dietetics?
Do good in your science classes, because we think about nutrition and we think about nutrition as being food, but nutrition is so much more complicated than just food. There's metabolism and digestion and absorption and excretion of nutrients and all of these components that work together. And we have to understand how those work and how disease states play a role. So there's so much working knowledge that comes in with dietetics. So having a good, solid science foundation is really important, and is really a springboard into making everything else easy. Or easier, I should say.
I would agree. I think those science classes, sometimes I remember applying into internships, and I had done pretty decent in my science courses. I actually feel like those were among some of my strongest, but there was always that lingering feeling of like, oh, but were they good enough? So yeah, just do good in those and carry that knowledge forward with you. It's not about just like passing a test and being done with it, because especially like Dr. Whedon was saying, as soon as you start getting into metabolism, all those processes, like, they matter.
And I guess one more thing I would add to that is be an advocate. Be an advocate for yourself, because we are in a profession that's not widely known and oftentimes misunderstood. And the best way to clear up that confusion is to be an advocate for yourself and for the profession. Don't be afraid to tell somebody, these are the skills, this is what I can do. And that gains your respect, rather than thinking, oh, maybe someday they'll figure out I can do this. Because I think a lot of times as dietitians, we have slightly softer personalities, and we have to advocate for ourselves.
Okay. Sam, what was it like moving to Pocatello from being in Boise at Boise State?
It's different. I think, at least for me, it fostered a much better learning experience. I know in Boise, like, there's so many things to do all the time. There's just like different things happening all around you. So Pocatello is a lot more low key, obviously. And yeah, and especially like kind of how I mentioned earlier with the smaller faculty, that was actually such a benefit, I felt like, because it never put a barrier in terms of like asking for help or asking for clarification. You know, I could speak up in classes freely and ask questions about whatever was being covered. And so I think like pushing through that time in Pocatello, but getting a much better experience out of it was very valuable. So.
And you spent 2 years there. So you did your junior year and your senior year there.
Yeah.
Okay. And then where did you do you're doing your DBD, your internship and master's degree at the Meridian campus, correct?
Yeah. So I just graduated with the last class in December. So, and I got a job with St. Luke's before I finished the program. And so now I've just been having to kind of sit and wait on all my credentials to come through. So it's been really cool. But again, I feel like ISU set me up so well for that. So I was able to form a lot of relationships in my internship. And I think that's what really helped me out through that process and being able to like nail down a job before I had even taken the exam. So.
Okay. In your junior and senior year, what was your favorite class?
I personally liked MNT, but that's because I really gravitate towards the clinical stuff. So I like the science-y disease states personally. So.
Okay. Yeah. So in terms of the fun stuff though, like did you get to do anything in the food management class, like make actual food? And like, as you said, Alicia, that there's a lot of, we get to play with food and.
Yeah, so there's 2 courses or classes specifically throughout the program where you really like just get to be in the foods lab, hands-on cooking things, and that's foods and meal management and experimental. And during those times, like they are what they say they are. You're either kind of learning to cook and you're getting your hands in there, learning to follow recipes, kind of teaching one another different skills, things like that. And then in experimental, you know, you are experimenting, like we're challenged to create our own recipe and see what impacts foods certain ways. And so that's really fun. And I feel like those are great courses to really like bond with your cohort too, because you know, sometimes when you're waiting for something to be done in the oven, you just have that time to get really close with your classmates. And I think it's good. It's a good experience.
Cool. Favorite vegetable?
I like some asparagus.
Okay. So. And how would you cook it?
I throw some olive oil on it and some garlic salt and then just toss it into the oven until I feel like it's done.
Okay. Alicia, favorite vegetable?
I am really into roasted broccoli right now. So tossed in olive oil, the little lemon pepper, roasted in the oven. When it comes out, squeeze some lemon juice on it. And my kids and husband aren't quite as fond of it as I am, but I'm loving broccoli right now.
Very cool. Do you think I didn't ask a question? Is there a question, Sam, that you wished I would have asked today that like you wish they would have known or wish they would have asked?
I think the only thing I would really add is just that like the scope of dietetics is so wide. And so if you're feeling a little like, especially because I know myself and Dr. Whedon are a lot more like clinically driven and we kind of like the sciencey side of things. There's so much more to that too. Like the community aspect of dietetics is so big and so like not talked about enough, honestly. There's lots of community programs that show the value of food, you know, and so things like SNAP and WIC and yeah, just there's so much to that, which I think is really cool too. And I had 2 friends in the program with me that just graduated and went straight into management. And so if you feel like that's your calling too, like there's lots of options for dietetics. And I think if you have any interest, it's a great path.
Very cool. Alicia, do you think I missed anything?
I think we pretty much covered everything. I guess the one thing I would like to say is that just because you're not a student at Idaho State University doesn't mean I'm not available as a resource. You know, if you're thinking about dietetics, you're thinking about transferring, contact me, ask me questions. We can meet via Zoom. I do email a lot, but I'm also available as a resource. Sometimes students don't feel like they can contact faculty at Idaho State University because they're not a student there, but it's okay. You know, that's how you learn, and that's how you figure out whether or not this is a good fit for you. So.
Yeah, and I would just add to that, we can certainly help with the the coursework piece and making sure we're matching courses. And we do strongly recommend our students to earn an Associate of Science before they leave us, so that those core courses tend to flow a little bit better before they leave junior year. I think we do have a kind of a nice customizable way for them to do their 2 years here and then do their junior year at Idaho State University while they're in the application process at Pocatello. It's not a perfect fit for everybody, but it's certainly something that we encourage students to do. And then I always ask them to reach out to you because you're dietitians. I'm not. I know enough to be deadly and to kind of wet the whistle and get them excited. And but at the same token, I do think it's helpful for students to have that option. And just as a plug, I'm going to plug the Health Science Night at Meridian on March 15th. It's between 5:30 and 7. The internship folks will be there hanging out and kind of doing some cool things. And so it's nice to be able to talk to some folks. And I know that we've encouraged our students to participate if they can. I personally love Health Night, and I go myself, and I peruse, and I like to go see the anatomy lab, and I like to see all of the different classrooms over there and talk to students and talk to folks. So just putting a shameless plug for you both in there. And I'm going to stop the recording.